also. Oops. Good afternoon. Oh, sorry, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Shipton. I'm Julian Assange's father. I'm here today to encourage support for Julian and really to describe what the situation is. So we see it as a global problem, and it's divided into three avenues: the repression of press, publication, free speech, free association. Julian's circumstance is that he will, it started 10 years ago with an arbitrary detention of 10 days, then house arrest of 18 months, 7.5 years in the as an asylee in the embassy. I'd note that when Julian was dragged out of the embassy, there's a legal process you have to undergo to remove asylum. This wasn't done. So every step of the way we see distortion or malfeasance or misfeasance or abrogation of Julian's human rights. Then 10 months in maximum security at Belmarsh prison with 22 to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. The Istanbul Protocol says that 23 hours a day solitary confinement is torture. So now Julian's in the common prison population, still 22 hours a day or up to 22 hours a day in his cell by himself, but it has 40 other inmates now rather than none at all. This oppression of a publisher and a journalist and publication, WikiLeaks, is intended to intimidate all publishers. To defend Julian, there's about 100,000 people working worldwide, a few hundred websites, 110 lawyers. It costs in 4 jurisdictions and probably will end up costing $10 million. No publisher and no journalist and no publication is going to take on that sort of burden. So the intimidation of comment, the intimidation of publishers and publications is complete unless Julian is, his extradition is simply refused. This is an oppression of us because we no longer would be able to have ordinary conversations with each other over very simple and verified facts, just how we speak to each other normally and how we allocate our resources and our support to government or corporations will be blinded. So that's one avenue. The second avenue is the intimidation and judicial kidnapping of technical people. There are 3 examples there. So that's Mike Lynch, who in the UK, a billionaire IT, he's under extradition threat. There's Ola Bin, another brilliant technician. He's under threat of extradition from Ecuador. There's Meng Wanzhou, who's the CEO of Huawei, and she was under threat of extradition to the United States. So this is harvesting technical capacity and oppression and creating fear in the technology industry. The third avenue is under Obama there were 454 extrajudicial murders, the Tuesday kill list, they called it, where Obama and Bannon, as head of the CIA, would choose from a suggested list those that were to be murdered that week. This, you can see this continues, this policies, all of these policies continue under Trump with the murder of Soleimani a couple of weeks ago, lured there to Iraq under the auspices of negotiating a peace contract, a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. They're the three threats that face us. The other thing I'd like to speak about is the nature of WikiLeaks is comparable to the nature of Ethereum. So WikiLeaks, it's obvious, is a wiki. When they were doing the cables before the cables were dumped by David Lee, the Guardian journalist who published the passphrase, even put in the index of the book, here's the passphrase, to the entire cables cache, which was then published by in their entirety, published by John Young of Shipton. Before that, WikiLeaks was working with 96 cooperative publishers in filtering and analysing the cables before they were published. The redactions were done in concert with the United States government. One aspect, one instrument of the United States government was involved. When Julian and Sarah found out that when they found out that Der Spiegel knew that they could download and publish the entire cache, Julian rang the State Department and implored them to act, where they reacted with indifference. Now, of course, they accused Julian of data dumping and endangering sources. As you see, that's just bunkum. Now, the next aspect of WikiLeaks is that it started off as a sort of a naive wiki where information would be sorted and analysed by collaborators and then published, and then became very, very sophisticated with the analysis of the cables by 96 other publishers. With the court case presently, Julian's in a glass box about that big over there. And it's at the end of the court, so he only sees the back of his lawyers' heads and he sees the face of the judge up there. This was for terrorists, not for, 48-year-old intellectuals. So we applied to have Julian brought into the body of the court. As you know, the due process requires each side to be equally armed. So you have the prosecutor there, sitting with him are the three Department of Justice American officials, and they converse with each other in confidence and constantly. With Julian on this side, he can't pass notes through. He can't call it his attention his lawyers because they're looking at the judge. And he can't hear properly. This is, and it's really important in these technical matters for Julian to be able to intercede and guide or discuss with his lawyers. An application was put in, and the judge refused it without reason. So it's a show trial aimed at destroying Julian and WikiLeaks completely. The the gifts of WikiLeaks to us, and I mean, because it's all technical people here, you know how contemporarily you can look up at WikiLeaks, find a cable and have it, review it yourself and make your own decisions about the quality of the information or what you would do with the information. Very important. Now, 10 years ago, the Afghan files were released, 250-odd thousand. This is important. All of that information takes a good while to be absorbed into the body politic. 10 years. Last week, the United States surrendered to the Taliban, realizing that they've got to get out. So that's the power of these collaborative ventures. Tremendous power. Takes a long, long while to turn around an empire as gigantic as the United States. But as that information that's constantly available and can be fully searched, as that permeates into the community, the support for these criminal activities drops. And so there's no support in the American public, well, virtually no support in the American public, and none of the so-called allies of the United States are the slightest bit interested in continuing in Afghanistan. A great example of the power of collaborative venture and the power of the internet to assist history to change the way we conceive of government action. That's about all I've got to say. I don't want to go on forever. But there is Ethereum, and there you can make a donation to Julian's Defence Fund. It's important that we win this. I wander around Europe, and I must tell you that in every body politic and politicians, for example, I think on Saturday I go and see, in Geneva, I go and meet Lula and Dilma Rousseff and Lula, the ex-presidents of Brazil. So the support is there, it's got a lot of weight, and it's growing. So with your help, it will continue. Thanks very much. Oh, do you want any question? Any?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, fantastic.
Actually, I'm visiting friends from Ukraine, and our office is just 100 kilometers from the front lines. So we're fighting Russia. Every day, one guy dies. Just this morning, one person died. And no one actually creates Ethereum pages for these people. So I just want to ask you a question about your son's participation in the US presidential campaign. There were some leaks appearing on WikiLeaks that some people say were used to undermine Hillary Clinton's campaign and ultimately help Republicans to bring Donald Trump as a president of the States. So what do you say to people that say that your son was used to actually serve Russia's interest to undermine democracy?
Oh, well, it's a worn-out old thing, that one. You know, Julian described the two candidates as a choice between gonorrhea and syphilis. So I don't know that he's very enthusiastic about either of them. The other thing is that WikiLeaks doctrine, as I know it, is the protection of sources. So just last week, an information was that Dana Rohrabacher, a senator, had gone to Julian in the embassy and said, if you tell us publicly who your source is for the DNC leaks, you can get a pardon. Well, he didn't reveal the source. He just don't reveal the sources. That's one. The other thing is the doctrine of WikiLeaks. That if you take the risk of giving WikiLeaks an important leak or whatever leak, really, they'll go with it as hard as they can. And they'll make sure that your risk is rewarded. In the leak becomes public all over the world, which they've done successfully time and time again. So the Russia thing is just all bunk. Some technical analysis by William Binney, who was director of the NSA, reveals that the download speeds had to be a USB stick or a CD. It couldn't have been downloaded over the internet. It's too quick. Anyway, I guess that answers.
Does anybody else would like to have a question? Oh, fantastic.
Could you explain what Julian thought about kind of blockchain technologies, decentralization, and I heard a rumor he was into crypto kitties.
Sorry?
Crypto cats, crypto kitties?
Oh, yeah. Last Christmas before last, every Christmas I went and spent 2 weeks with Julian in the embassy. In the beginning, the embassy would let me sleep on the couch. In the end, and I had to beg to get in. But anyway, so I was standing behind Julian, watching him play crypto kitties at Christmas time. I think they did really well. You know, he did really well at crypto kitties.
So yeah, you say that you need millions and millions of donations in defense for, for Julian Assange defense to fight the American government. You probably need some millions, but do you have an idea like how much have you already collected and how much do you still need to be able to succeed in some way to change how he's being taken care of, and to change it from a mock trial into a real trial?
I don't know. I don't know those figures. I just can tell you that I sold my house to do this work, and so far it wasn't much of a house, but so far I've spent 100,000 of my own money. I don't take any money out of WikiLeaks at all. I just I'll go until I run out, then I have to stop. As for defend WikiLeaks, I can name the law teams, if you want. They're in, actually there's 5 jurisdictions when I remember now, because there's the European Court, there's the Spanish Surveillance Court, there's the American lawyers, and there's the English lawyers, and there's a small team in Australia too. But the team in Australia so far, we've paid through local donations in Australia. Yeah. Sorry, it's not more complete and not my party.
Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Assange and this hard-working presentation. Thank you very much.